They should probably look at the United Kingdom, in Europe, but not of it, so to speak. I'd also look at major unaligns, particularly India. India is hugely important, and working out some deal with Modi would be a great signal. Let's remember just 2 months ago in Washington, Modi came here and talked about MAGA plus MEGA, make India great again, equals mega. So maybe Trump should figure that out. And finally, somebody in the Asia Pacific, either Japan or Australia, would be very good. I think those three would send large signals about the seriousness and kind of the direction of travel of the administration.
Well, as we talk about the seriousness of the administration, Terry, and it's great to have you back here on Bloomberg TV and radio, I wonder if you see any kind of credibility dent that the administration is now going to have to contend with as it conducts itself in these negotiations, considering, once again, we have seen an extreme change in tariff policy and a flipping and flopping of the narrative. Does that actually give these other countries who are coming to the table a little bit more leverage? Is there a bluff to be called at some point?
Oh, sure. There's credibility gaps all over the place. There's a credibility gap on the part of the administration to some extent. There's an awful lot of allies and friends of the United States that feel whipsawed and feel bruised in a lot of different ways, and this pause does a lot of things. But one of the things it does is gives Trump an opportunity to right-size those relationships and frankly reassure people. One other thing that we should all be aware of too was that Lutnick's people at Commerce were out to a number of major countries, and I assume others as well. I know of a few that giving people a laundry list of what they wanted to talk about, both in terms of tariffs and other sorts of trade barriers, before the tariffs even went into effect. So, I will give the Trump people good marks for being able to talk to allies and friends and others before all this started. So hopefully that can help push things. Thirdly, I would point out as well, I thought Mike McKee gave a very good summary of all of this a few minutes ago on your air. One thing I would add to that, though, is that countries may well be able to come to deals by making future promises. The United States itself does this by saying, we're going to reach a deal to do X, Y, Z on trade, and as part of that, we promise within a certain period of time we're going to pass legislation, we're going to change rules, whatever. Those countries will do similar things, I think, in order to make deals.
It must be grading season. We have here Terry Haines giving his marks to the White House. Ira Jersey, our chief rate strategist for the U.S., giving his marks to the auctions that we've seen over the last couple of days, giving the 10-year auction an A+ and a 30-year auction an A, saying that they were really solid. Makes me ask you, Terry, sort of how you look at this administration's visibility into the markets and their response. You wrote earlier in a note that perhaps the White House, we've misjudged how much this president cares about market moves. And I think yesterday we saw perhaps an indication that it's still something that the president cares quite passionately about, that he could see those startling moves in the bond market, for instance, and feel like he has to do something that things aren't going to course. Do you care to revise the statement that you made earlier? Have things changed this week vis-a-vis our sense of the way that the president looks at the markets?
No, I won't revise. I will extend my remarks, though.
Fair enough. You may.
On Capitol Hill. I will extend my remarks in this way. When markets say, geez, Trump cares about the markets, I mean, to me, that's a illusion and a rationalization extraordinaire, because they don't really mean Trump pays attention to the markets. What they mean is we, the markets, are actually the masters of the universe, and Trump will do as we wish. Well, I've been telling markets for a couple of months on tariffs, that's not going to be the case. The reason why it's not going to be the case is because the goals here are geopolitical. This is not set 2017. The reason why it's not is because economic policy is roped and yoked to geopolitical goals across the board. And, you can even see that with tariffs, where some of the tariffs exist for geopolitical reasons. So, presidents don't think about the markets all the time. The markets are not the only thing that needs to be dealt with. And, so what I would say to folks is that, you've shown, or as Trump has shown, that he's certainly interested in where the markets are on these things, but he's not paying sole attention, and he's not gonna dance to markets' tunes. Number one. Number two, I think the other thing we need to remember here too is anybody on Wall Street that's self-congratulating today shouldn't. Because one of the reasons why these tariffs happened is essentially that Wall Street let them happen. In Washington, silence equals assent. If you're silent, that means go ahead. And they didn't really raise any objections to what was about to happen until well after it happened.
Well, it's a very fair point. Certainly, we're seeing, it seems, some protest happening now, looking at the red on my screen, Terry. Also on my screen, I would point out we are still paying attention to the cabinet meeting at the White House, which is ongoing. The president has gotten reports from almost every cabinet secretary at this point. The Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, is speaking now. As you can see, if you're with us on Bloomberg TV or on YouTube, we still have Secretary of State Marco Rubio to hear from, and then the president may well start taking questions from reporters. We'll dip back in for those if indeed that happens. In the meantime, though, Terry, as you speak to this idea that the president isn't exclusively focused on the markets, what have you learned this week about the influence others in his administration may have in interpreting the market action and then shaping presidential policy by extension, as we understand that Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick presented a kind of united front to the president yesterday, which helped lead to this change in tariff policy? Is this actually a sign that Wall Street's initial expectations of Scott Bessent being kind of a steadying hand, if you will, when he was tapped for this position, may indeed be serving in that role?
Markets still have a policy concern, of course, in large part because this is a pause. It's not a volte-face or a throwing away of the policy. And Trump still has a lot of urgency around this. So markets are right to continue to be concerned. Where I think the White House has improved here is, though, in communication message, something that's important. And we've been talking for 6 months now about a so-called team of rivals that are headed up by Bessent and Lutnick. And I think what you saw yesterday here is Bessent put pretty much in charge of the messaging to Wall Street, while Lutnick is supposed to be responsible for the shepherding forward of negotiations and potential deals. Bessent has a foot in two camps right now. Bessent is trying very hard to push the tax cuts bill, and they'll try to push a bill and get it done, frankly, I think within this 90-day period. They have a pretty good chance of being successful at that. But at the same time, Bessent's going to continue to be the soothsayer for Wall Street, and that seems like the right conclusion for the Trump people to reach, since Bessent tends to stoke some confidence where I think Secretary Lutnick, for rightly or wrongly, doesn't.
Terry, you've mentioned a number of names there, and one that didn't come up is Jamieson Greer, Ambassador Jamieson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative. And there was that photograph that we saw from the House hearing yesterday where the Truth Social post went out, and an aide had to lean over toward the U.S. Trade Representative and show him what the president had done. Where does he fit into this pantheon of economic advisors, and what does that tell you? Is it at all worrying that the man who has been charged here with trade policy wasn't in the Oval Office yesterday as Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent and President Trump sat down and pounded out that poetic, important post on Truth Social?
Well, the USTR is typically given cabinet rank, not always by every president, but typically given cabinet rank. But at the end, not only does he get his power from the president, but he's essentially a staffer of the president. I mean, they all are, but they're not cabinet secretaries or anything else. And the USTR in this case, I think, is treated a little bit more as a staffer than as a peer of Secretaries Bessent or Lutnick. I also think, in Greer's defense, he's pretty new to this. Just got confirmed very recently, and probably not quite as up to speed on it as everybody else. But I think the net of what you point out clearly is that the three people who are in charge of all this are the president as the decision maker, Bessent as the person who has his eyes most clearly on the markets broadly, and Lutnick is the person who's supposed to go out and execute these deals.